1984, I mean 83, March 1983, 15th to be specific, was when United Nations decided to declare World Consumer Rights Day. And that's why it's usually celebrated on that day. So it has become a global phenomenon. The world over marks and celebrates that day. Now, the essence of doing that is to, like you said in the intro, is to create awareness on the rights of consumers and the need for preserving those rights. You know, and also to encourage ethical and responsible business practices by service and product suppliers. So basically, we can say that's the brief history and the importance of consumer rights. Consumer rights day.
Patrick, in your own opinion, do you think the rights of the consumer have been protected in this country by the things that have been happening around us?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen, for that question. Talking about protection of consumer rights in Nigeria, if I would want to say that one of the most violated rights in Nigeria today is consumer rights. It's being violated even by the government itself, in the sense that the government itself has an agency which it calls the Federal Competitors Consumer Rights Protection Commission, that's FCCPC, also, which is the main regulator. It regulates competition between industry players. And it is also the number one agency. There are other agencies anyway. Saddled with the responsibility of protecting, consumer rights. But the number one agency, the lead agency, is this FCCPC, Federal Competitors Consumer Rights Protection Commission. To regulate competition among industry players and to also protect the rights of the Nigerians. Now, looking at Nigeria. The Nigerian consumer is one of the most vulnerable consumers on the face of the earth. The government itself just comes up with some of its policies.
But why would you say that?
Why I would say that is because I just can't think of anywhere in the world where people just wake up all overnight and then almost nothing is okay. Now, for instance, Stephen, look at the call rates, charges of the various telecom networks. The fixed rates at their own, the way they so wish. Look at even data consumption. The data, that Nigerian, smart, internet users. The data they use to access the internet. These, telecom companies just fix prices arbitrarily. Sometimes you see people complain of them going online. Some videos start playing in the background, consuming their data. And all of these things, nobody says anything about it. Look at the pay TV, the various pay TV companies and operators, DSTV, StarTimes, and all of that. Look at them, within a very short period of time, these people increase arbitrarily, increase rates. Just within the space of 1 year. I remember GoTV. I can remember very well, this is their package. They call, I think, Jolly or so. It was around 2007, it was around 2008. Within 1 year, they jacked it up to 3,300. And within that same year, it is now 3,950. No form of regulation. Nobody is challenging. No government agency is coming up to say, no, this shouldn't be so. If there's an increase, there should be some kind of, you should give Nigerians a breathing space to cope with that increase before another one. But within a very short period of time, let's say at least 1 year is too short a period for a particular service to be increased, for the rate to be increased twice. And all of that. So I feel that the Nigerian consumer is a consumer that is very, very vulnerable. A consumer that is just at the mercy of producers, manufacturers, wholesalers and retailers. People just unilaterally put fixed prices at their own wish, and nothing happens.
In essence, the rights of our consumers have never been protected.
Well, in the past, because when some of us were still very, very young, we heard of stories of a price control agency, you know, that was quite effective. That may be under the military rule anyway, because a lot of persons will tell you that in a democracy there are certain freedoms that come with it, but the military could just wake up one day and then come up with a policy and start implementing it, you know, with the so-called immediate effect.
Yes.
You know, and all of that. So maybe in the past, but currently, looking at the way things are going on in this country, the rights of consumers is not being protected.
It's okay. In order not to digress, to the theme for this is in the neighborhood of AI. So Solomon, can you tell us how, because of the inclusion of AI in our operations, how consumers have shifted or how they have responded to this AI business? Because as far as I'm concerned, this is just by the way, I've always said AI is coming for us, and they're not just coming for us, they're coming for our jobs too. So how is the consumer responding to the AI intrusion into our space?
I think the AI technology, integrating the AI technology in consumer practices or in consumer lifestyle is one of the best things that may have happened in consumerism.
Best?
Yes, it's good. Because, well, it may come with attendant consequences, but it is needless for me to tell you that that is where the world is going. And so artificial intelligence for consumerism now is almost like a user innovation. So it's something that would come, even if you like it or not. At a point, some people began to crave for it. So it's a technology in time, right in time. And I say it's right for consumerism because, you know, automated systems are better than manual systems. Because manual systems come with human errors and all that.
Manipulation.
Manipulations. But automated systems are not like that. Automated systems do not have respect for caliber of people, for cadre of people. Everybody is treated the same and all that. So when you talk about that, then AI is going to be a game changer for consumerism. Also, it will also increase the speed of service because you know, those days of waiting on queues and having to sit. There was a time I went to a particular bank in Nigeria. They introduced that policy for the first time, and I was shocked because it was a long time I never went to that bank. When I went, I had to ask somebody, does this become a hospital? It was looking like a maternity center because people were sitting down comfortably. In fact, they made more chairs and brought into the bank. I was like, this is not necessary for this kind of era and all that. So I think artificial intelligence will come to break that, to ease the speed of service and you know, make it more convenient for people, save their time and all that. So it's a nice thing. But then I think the theme for this year was fair and responsible AI for consumers. And why is it very important? Fair and responsible are the key words here. Because artificial intelligence comes with its attendant challenges, like I said. One is breach of privacy is one of them. So I think the theme was focused on trying to educate industry players on how they can develop artificial intelligence with respect for consumers. Because it's not just about speed, it's not just going to be about technology and all that. It's also going to be about the consumer, who is the major player, the major stakeholder in consumerism. How is his right of privacy, for instance, going to be protected? There's also going to be concerns about misinformation and all that. So how can we curtail misinformation of consumers?
And of course, the rights,
as regards to
the rights of the consumer as far as privacy is concerned.
Exactly. So, like Patrick said, maybe he was a bit skeptical of saying yes to your answer, to your question. But the truth of the matter is, I agree with him that the Nigerian consumer is the most vulnerable. Why do we say that? Is because we cannot imagine that a consumer in another part of the world will experience the kind of thing that a Nigerian consumer experiences. It could exist, but we just can't imagine it, all right? So we think that for Nigerian society, we're not even talking about AI yet. We are talking about the elementary consumer rights that should be accorded to us as Nigerians. And so for us, this theme is even advanced for the Nigerian society, because we are still talking about the elementary rights that should be accorded to us. All right? Because right of information is one of the rights. You know, the consumer protection is talking about the transparency in terms of quantity. There should be transparency in terms of quantity of product, in terms of quality of product, even in terms of pricing. So you just, like he was saying, you don't just rise up and begin to arbitrarily really increase prices of products because you want to do so, or you don't do just reduce the quantity of product because you feel like reducing the quantity just to make people buy more and more of the product and all that. Even in terms of quality, you don't just wake up and reduce the quality of product because you feel it should be reduced so that you can maximize profit. In fact, consumers have the right to question some of these things.
Now,
so this is what we are talking about, the basic and elementary rights of consumers.
We have the Consumer Protection Council, CPC. What is their role? I'll come back to you, Patrick, but I need him to, because of the last statement you just made.
Basically, that is the role of Consumer Protection Council as was enacted, and of course it came into full operation in 1999 in Nigeria. So they are saddled with the responsibility of protecting the Nigerian consumer, to ensure transparency in terms of value, in terms of quality, in terms of quantity, in terms of cost, even to promote ethical business practices among product and service providers. So this is what they are supposed to be doing. Maybe they are doing that, but to say is enough is a big question, because the truth of the matter is the Nigerian consumer can hardly feel the impact of CPC. As I speak to you, especially in an economy of like ours, where there is high rate of inflation, you know, Nigerians are vulnerable. We are affected on a daily basis. You can bear me witness that there are no specific prices of commodities in the market anymore. You go to the same market, shop A is selling at 200, shop B is selling at 300, shop C is selling at even 500 naira. Now, what is happening? And unsuspecting consumers have been looted like that, you know, by various providers of goods and services. So there has to, if CPC was doing its responsibility as stipulated, then you would see that there should have been a control over this. First of all, how many consumers, Nigerian consumers, what even makes somebody more vulnerable when you are not informed of what is your right. So Nigerian consumer in the first place do not know whether they have a right or not. And that is the responsibility of CPC, to create awareness on the rights of consumers, all right, before any other thing. Because if you don't know your rights, you can't ask for it, because you would think that you can't be accorded that. And the little somebody makes, you are so grateful as if they have given you a bonus and all that.
Patrick, I was coming to you on that too. You agree with him that the Nigerian consumer doesn't know his right? Because I wanted to ask, you people kept saying the consumer is vulnerable, the consumer is the most maybe the one that is
vulnerable on the face of the earth.
One of the most, if not. Okay, so how come the consumers themselves are not complaining? How come everybody is quiet?
Well, you see, Stephen, I don't want to accept the fact that the typical Nigerian is a docile person.
You don't want to accept, or you're saying it?
I'm saying it, but I don't want to believe that it's true.
It's okay.
It's the truth. That is the reality, but I don't want to accept it.
It's okay.
You understand that the average Nigerian is someone that is docile.
Okay.
Just when they look at the decisions that our leaders take, they are taking advantage of the docility of Nigerians. Somebody, for instance, let me give you an example, Stephen. Look at the removal of subsidy on petroleum products. Look at the floating of the naira. These are two policies that are capable of driving inflation. You know, And then you have a government that is just coming on board and then implementing these two policies at the same time. Even in the US, even in the UK, you know, where some of these Bretton Woods institutions are domiciled, there is subsidy. Now look at energy, electricity, oil, gas, and all that. These are like what they call, just like how oxygen is to a man, that is how energy is to production. It is the life wire of production. It is the air that production breathes. Now, when you don't control the cost of energy, automatically the cost of production will go up, and it will affect the general cost of goods and services. As I'm talking to you now, Stephen, in the UK there's a cap, there's a ceiling within which the cost of fuel we cannot go beyond. And once it gets to that point, the government comes in. Why is the government coming in? The government is coming in because it wants to ensure that cost of production does not go up, so that cost of goods and services will also not go up. Because if that happens, people will protest. That is society that does not have docile citizens. But what do we have in Nigeria? We have a scenario where almost anything goes. Nigerians have the issue of fuel subsidy removal came with its own attendant inflation, and of course the floating of the currency, the naira. Just look at the way the government even handles the palliative. How well are we going to even score the government in terms of the palliative it came with to cushion the effect of the poverty it drew so many Nigerians into, and of course even the inflation that came and rubbished whatever earnings Nigerians have. How well did it handle it? And just then the government is about wanted to come up again with another removal of subsidy in electricity, by which will lead to a rise in the tariff. And then I started asking myself that how come a government is doing all of it just when Nigerians are about coming out of one? The government is no relief. The government is coming with another.
Why are Nigerians not complaining?
Now, Stephen, before Solomon comes in, Stephen, there's something I wanted to say earlier. Nigerians have been, do I say bastardized? Have been beaten, battered, disempowered for decades. The average Nigerian is too disempowered to fight for his or her right. Okay? Because look, you are struggling for basics, for God's sake. How can a man who cannot feed, who cannot afford a decent shelter over his head, who is thinking of his school fees for his children, thinking of feeding, thinking of electricity, thinking of fuel and basics, necessities of life, Nigerians don't have it. Even in the midst of all those things, right now, if you are weak, can you fight? Still complaining, Stephen. No, Nigerians are complaining. They are complaining. How come are you not doing it in such a way that the government
except you want Nigerians to go violent?
No, not violent.
In which case they will be the ones to be affected, and they know.
How do other citizens of other nations do it that make their government responsible and responsive?
Now this is what I think. That Nigerians have been complaining on a daily basis. I'm one of them. I'm a consumer myself, just like any of you.
Complaining in their various
and I know, yes, and that is the extent to
who hears them?
No, listen. You see, they say information is power. Okay. Do you agree with me that information is power? And this is what we are talking about. That if a people are not informed, especially about their rights, it's even very difficult for them to ask for those rights. All right? And so we are talking about consumerism today. And we are saying that the average Nigerian consumer does not know that he is or they are supposed to be protected. They are not even aware that there is an agency of the government saddled the responsibility of protecting them. I am telling you, if you do a poll on the public space, you will discover many people do not know what CPC is about, not to talk about their responsibility. Every state is supposed to have a consumer protection council office. But if you ask me here in my state, honestly, I cannot tell you where the office is located. How popular is that agency of the government that I cannot tell you? And I'm educated to some extent. Then talk about those consumers who are below me in terms of education or in terms of literacy. All right. So what we are saying is that the people have been disenfranchised, the people have been crippled, the people have been made vulnerable. First, by depriving them of a critical thing that makes them powerful, which is information. All right. Now, there are also other factors when it comes to consumerism and all that. Maybe I will just mention for the purpose of understanding. Okay. No, we have this religion we talk about. It's another factor.
Yeah.
You know, ordinarily, if you step on my toes or you violate my rights in any way, and I discuss that, you know, with my pastor or my religious leader or anybody, the first thing they tell you is leave it to God, and just leave it. God will fight your battles and all that. So it has made Nigerians to just have a lukewarm attitude when it comes to consumerism. In fact, if you have been disenfranchised in the course of service delivery and you want to make noise, especially maybe some example in the bank, somebody who is behind you will tell you, my brother, calm down, just leave it to God. Okay, so everybody feels that, well, when you fight, you are a noisemaker and all that. And then there's another one, all right? Because look, because we cannot take axes, we cannot take guns to the street and begin to fight for ourselves. That's why we have a government. So there's also a judicial system that is supposed to remember that one of the rights of consumers is the right of redress, of seeking redress.
Yeah.
All right. So these are things that should have empowered a consumer to stand up to their rights. But the judicial system in Nigeria,
on this consumer thing, I think we should be wrapping up in it.
Yeah. Now, the judicial system in Nigeria does not also is somehow complex for an ordinary person to go through. You take a multinational company to the court, they will definitely win you. That case will never be heard for the rest of.
Okay. So now, what do we do at this level to prevent? Because what you have mentioned here is the factors militating against consumerism.
Exactly.
So now, what are the things the government, probably the consumer, and all agencies should do so that the spirit of consumerism will be
when the consumer suffers? This is one thing we need to know. When the consumer suffers, nobody benefits except the perpetrators of that terror on them. Government should not be a conspirator of that, because the people belong to the government belongs to the people. It is the responsibility of the government to protect the Nigerian consumer. That is why there is CPC established to protect the consumer. It is for the government of Nigeria to enforce the responsibility that has been given to CPC. CPC needs to rise up to its responsibility, because if the masses are being disenfranchised and manipulated by service providers, and many of them are not even Nigerians. You allow people who come from other nations who don't joke with their citizens to come and manipulate your own citizens, and you don't say anything about it. The government is not benefiting anywhere, because that underrates the social responsibility of the government, because it's affecting the masses, affecting the people. So it is a strong call on Consumer Protection Council at the various levels of establishment to rise up to their statutory responsibility of, first of all, creating awareness on the consumer. Let the consumer know that he has certain rights. There are certain rights that are bestowed on them, and they can also ask for these rights, okay? And they can also seek redress. And when we start that way, other issues can come in, because you talk about the judicial system, there has to also be a strengthening of the judicial system, so that it is not made too complex for an ordinary person to go through.
Yes. You may need to say maybe your last words on this particular.
Okay, yes. Just to add to what Solomon said concerning the way forward out of this, that Solomon made a very, very important issue, the issue of awareness creation. Very, very important. Then empowerment is as well. It's very, very important. The agency in charge of consumer protection must be alive to its responsibilities. The various, because I'm also aware of so many non-governmental organizations that are into awareness creation. They are doing well, but we'll urge them to do more in terms of in the area of creation of awareness.
In fact, Patrick, funny enough, thank God you have mentioned that. Funny enough, I cannot even mention one NGO that is handling the issue of CPC. I wanted to mention that, I forgot. there are NGOs that are responsible for HIV and all that, health and all. But when it comes to CPC, I have not seen any Nigerian NGO that is championing the cause of consumer rights in Nigeria. I think that is an area
that's why I was saying that they should do more, you know, in terms of creating awareness and even fighting for you know, consumers that their rights have been violated. You know, and that is and of course again one very important government agency, National Orientation Agency. Just like the consumer rights, those are all organizations that are just existing on paper. We don't well, as Mr. Steve, have you heard of a kind of a national campaign being carried out by the National Orientation Agency? You hardly see that. You know, across the various media organizations, maybe once in a while you see it in the government media organizations like FRC and NTA, but you hardly see them in the private organization, media organizations, where there has the larger chunk, you know, of the viewership and the listenership and all that in the, you know, of Nigerians, because the bulk of Nigerians, you know, are viewers, you know, and listeners of, you know, these private media organizations. So the NOA should do well as well, and to incorporate them as well in their various campaigns to ensure that they enlighten Nigerians and ensure that Nigerians become more aware of their various rights, not just being aware of their rights, and they should also be aware of what to do, what steps to take to seek redress in case their rights have been violated.
All right, we are due for a break. Please do not go away. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Media Squad on Benue Television. The wave of drones and missiles that flew towards Israel overnight on Saturday brought with it a new phase of tension, uncertainty, and confrontation in the Middle East. Iran launched the unprecedented attack in response to a suspected Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, earlier this month. It marked a new chapter in a discord between the two states that percolated for years and has spiraled since Israel declared war on Hamas last October. The next steps remain unclear, but Israel is facing pleas from its ally to stop back from the brink of open warfare and choose a path of de-escalation. According to Israeli Defense Force IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari, he said more than 300 projectiles, including around 170 drones and over 120 ballistic missiles, were fired toward Israel in the immense aerial attack overnight. Approximately 350 rockets were fired from Iran, Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon's Hezbollah. Patrick,
Yes.
this is what we've just described happened probably a few days ago. And if you've read the history of war, large wars start from maybe a very small gunshot, and before it will escalate, allies will begin to come in, friends, supporters, sympathizers. Before you know it, will be a full-scale war. Now, what do you think about what has just happened in Israel, especially looking at it from the area where international organizations, other bodies, and of course Israel's allies are pleading that there shouldn't be any retaliation?
Yeah, Stephen, like you rightly said, this is the first time that there have been this there been
tension?
This conflict,
okay,
and tension between Israel and Iran in the Middle East. In fact, for decades now, Iran has its proxies across the Middle East that it uses to prosecute its war against Israel. It has been avoiding a direct confrontation with Israel. It has Hezbollah in Lebanon. It has Hamas in Gaza. It has the Houthi rebels in Yemen that control almost 70% or so of the of Yemen. It has and then pockets of terrorist groups and militias in Iraq and Syria. So it has a name it gives to all of them. It calls all of them the axis of resistance. What are they resisting? Anything from the US or the West by extension and Israel. That is their basic responsibility, to fight Israel and the West. Now, this is the first time that Iran is firing directly at Israel. So, of course, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, he called his war cabinet, and there was a disagreement. They have not agreed on whether there should be a retaliation or there should be and of course the scale. How is it even going to look like? Because don't forget that there was an attack on the Iranian consulate in Syria, in which commanders of what it calls the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, that is the major military body in its military, the Iranian military, and of course the Western world sees it as a terrorist organization. Don't forget that their leader was killed in Iraq also, but during Donald Trump's government. He was taken out through a drone attack and all that. So Israel now, because that man is one of the persons handling these guys, this axis of resistance, he's one of the coordinators. So don't forget that the Israeli defense minister, Yoav Gallant, said that they are going to go after all their enemies wherever they are. That was the language Iran used to say, okay, this must be coming from Israel. Because don't forget that Israel has not said anything, whether it is responsible or not. So Iran came out to say, okay, that this attack on its embassy is an attack on itself, and that's so it is going to respond. So of course the West have been expecting this to happen, but how and when, they were not sure, because Iran came out to say that the embassies of Israel in the Middle East are not safe. So of course the Iranian foreign minister came out yesterday to say that before the attack, the US through Iran informed the White House through Switzerland before and after the attack. And then of course President Joe Biden himself has come out to tell the Israelis that they shouldn't respond, that they should consider the interception and the shooting down of all these projectiles as a victory. Because I've not heard of anybody that died or any major destruction. It was just one little girl that was injured. And why was she injured? By the falling debris as a result of the destruction.
Nobody was killed.
Thank you very much. It takes a ballistic missile 5 minutes to move from Iran to Tel Aviv, from Tehran to Tel Aviv. It takes a cruise missile about 2 to 3 hours. It takes a drone about 8 to 9 hours to move from Tehran to Tel Aviv. You understand? So both the US, Britain, Jordan, and some other few nations, they all came together in shooting down all these projectiles, in ensuring that it does not get to Israel. Because knowing full, if it gets to Israel, Israel will respond, certainly. But for now, I think they will not respond.
Okay, now,
because the United Nations Secretary General has come out to call for restraint. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, President Joe Biden, the UK Prime Minister, even the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, has come out to say that both parties should show restraint. And even Iran itself, before the United Nations Security Council yesterday, said it is done, it's not going to do any other thing like that, it is okay with this. So everybody is saying, okay, Israel, you to just stop this, because the US itself is saying it does not want a regional conflict. It doesn't want, the US have made it very, very clear. Anthony Blinken has traveled to the Middle East since October 7th, October or so, when Israel declared war against Hamas. Anthony Blinken has been to the Middle East almost over 7 times. What is he trying to do? Trying to douse tension, trying to ensure that the conflict does not go beyond Israel and Hamas. because Joe Biden has made it very clear that dismantling Hamas is a legitimate objective.
Yeah.
So it should just remain within that.
Now,
so
Solomon,
everybody is trying to ensure that it doesn't go beyond that.
What will be the implication in the Middle East, as in, let's say Israel decides to retaliate? What do you think will be the implication of that in the Middle East and, of course, the neighboring nations? By extension, even Africa.
Yes, yes. Basically, like you started, nobody benefits from war.
Yeah.
Except those who are
war merchants.
War merchants.
Warmongers.
Exactly. So but of course, they are in the minority.
Yes.
They are in the minority. But the majority of the world will not benefit from any war at all. So should Israel retaliate or respond, then there's going to be serious instability in the Middle East. But like you said, this will also have a connected effect.
Yeah.
You know, first of all,
Particularly oil prices.
exactly.
Like
Now,
go up.
there's trade transactions within every region.
Yeah.
In Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, and you know that most of these regions, they even create what they call free trade zones,
yeah.
where trade is made easy and all that, and that is to facilitate development within the regions. And if there is chaos, there is disagreement, there is war, those trade bilateral agreements will be broken, and so it will affect trade within the region, and by implication, it will also have connected effect and all that. So nobody is safe should war break, a full-fledged war break within the Middle East. Nobody will be spared. Like he also said, oil, much of the oil is from there, and that will also affect global distribution of oil products and all that. So our prayer, just like the U.S. and other Israeli allies are pleading, there shouldn't be war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be war anywhere.
Yeah.
Because if there is war somewhere, then the global community will feel it.
Yeah.
Even if it's not directly, indirectly, it's going to affect. It will affect trade. Because of globalization, the trade has become, the world has become connected, even in terms of trade. So we have a lot of international organizations from the multinationals from the East region that are operating even in Africa. If there are hit, if they are affected back home, you know that they will be affected also wherever they are existing. So there is interconnectivity. Globalization has brought about interconnectivity of everything. So we pray that there is no full-fledged war in the Middle East.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I wish we can continue in this direction for a while, because people really need to know what is happening in the Middle East and the implication of a full-fledged war. But for want of time, this is where we are drawing the curtains. Thank you very much. I will be talking on this in our next meeting. Thank you very much for watching. This is where we draw the curtains on today's program. Please stay tuned for the rest of our programs. I'm Stephen Alichino. Abba. Have a nice day.